We're in Armagh. We're at the location of the old train station. This is the intersection of the Portadown railway line coming here from the north, and out to the east is the old line to Market Hill. But we're going to go south. We're going to try to trace the old line down to Keady. So currently on the side of the old line, it seems like a lot of stuff has been built on top of it here, mostly businesses, light industry, a bit of retail. We'll try to follow it as best we can, try to find some evidence of where there used to be a railway line. I think the old line would have followed roughly this path, and it would have crossed over around here. Now, if memory serves, these football fields are low down below the St Patrick's School. But this looks like the outline of an old railway. So let's see how much we can see at the crossover point. See, is there any evidence of great separation? Kind of hard to tell, it's all a bit overgrown. Need to physically go there and check this out. Let's keep following this line. And we get through a bit of open space, crosses over Cathedral Road. Don't see much evidence of a level crossing here, so the tracks must have gone underneath the road. And we keep going south. A few homes have been built on top of what was probably the old right-of-way. We go past the recreation centre, some sports fields, and we go between some housing developments here, and mercifully it seems like the old right-of-way has not been built upon. Few homes have been built here. So for a thought experiment, if we were to imagine what would it take to get this line reopened, what would you have to do? Threading that needle, getting through here might be a little tricky where these houses have been built. Oops, let me try that again. So could this have been a level crossing back in the day? This wall looks pretty old here. So I wonder if the trains would have come through at this point. But this wall looks pretty old as well, so I'm not sure. Maybe you can let me know in the comments. People more familiar with this line might be able to help me out. And if we keep going south, so now since the railway closed, Pearse Oaks have built their club here right beside the athletic grounds, and if we were to get the line somehow reopened, if we somehow got a railway through here, wouldn't it be helpful if we could have a railway halt at the athletic grounds? Because the capacity of the athletic grounds is something like 18,500, and it will fill up on match days. If there's a big match between somebody like Armagh and Tyrone, and you'll have a lot of fans coming down from the likes of Lurgan and Portadown, jamming the town with traffic. Much better if they could just take the train directly to the athletic grounds and put a halt here like they have at Old Trafford. Old Trafford has its own railway stop. Manchester United football ground. You could do one at the athletic grounds as well. Now the railway would have gone down here where this all-weather pitch is, and where Armagh CBS has since been built. So or close to it. Or perhaps where these houses have been built, because I'm seeing a clearing here, a big linear clearing. That's evidence of an old railway line. And all these homes have been built right on top of the old right-of-way, which disappoints me, because it's like when they closed this line in 1957, they just assumed the trains were never coming back, so it was okay to build on top of it. You get to the end of the road, there's the old line, and then it runs right into these houses. So to get a railway line reopened, what are you going to do? You're going to evict all these people from their homes? I don't think you can. You could do that in the 1960s when they built Craigavon, but you can't really do that nowadays. So to get a railway line reopened, it might involve some sort of, relocating the Pearse Oaks all-weather pitch, relocating the school, threading the line through here, get into this open space. That's a tricky one. So the old line would have come down here, through the fields, and the new line might have to come down here in our thought experiment, and then somehow make a turn around to pick up the path of the old tracks which ran here. See them running through the fields. The crossover point here, can we take a look? So the trains would have come through somewhere around here. Wonder, was there a level crossing? And we continue through the fields following this line of trees. Someone seems to have built an agricultural building here. The tree line continues, crosses over Ballyards Road. How does that look? Okay, it must have been grade separated. There's an old bridge. What's left of it? Why they had to take the bridge down, I do not know. Maybe they didn't want to maintain it. So now it's an old ruin. And it doesn't look all that old either. Incidentally, what could this be? Is that an old Norman ring fort? Let's press on south, following the tracks. Goes through a clearing, through the trees. Can we take a look at this crossover point? No, we can't. It's a private entrance. So we'll keep going south. Carr brothers have built a business on top of the old tracks. And then the trains would have crossed over Ballyards Road at this point. So this must have been a level crossing. Some homes have been built on top of the old right-of-way. You know, when we traced the old path down from Portadown to Armagh, there wasn't a whole lot of things that have been built on top of it, but there seems to have been more construction on this site. More homes have been built on top of the tracks. So if you're going to reopen railway lines, this would be one of the harder ones to reopen, I think. And the tracing of the old line kind of peters out here into the fields, and at this point we have to zoom out. So the remnants of the tracks disappear. And we pick it up again down further south, down here. And we're in for a treat here. So the line would have come down here, crossed over at this point. I get the impression the train would have gone under here. Again, it's hard to tell from this view. But we're in for a real treat here. This is Dundrum Road. And the land got really low. So they built a viaduct. The Tassa Viaduct. What a sight it would be if trains could run on this thing again. Isn't it a beautiful sight? And one thing that really jumps out at me about these old disused railways is Victorian engineers were working with steam trains. And a steam train typically has about 6 wheels of power going through it, pulling a train with, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 coaches. So there wasn't a whole lot of grip, which meant they couldn't go up or down very steep hills, which meant they had to build tracks very level. So when you're building a railway line through the country, if you're going through high ground, you cut through the hill. You create a cutting. If you're going over low ground, you build an embankment, and if you come to a very low bit of ground like this, where it's not feasible to build an embankment, you build a viaduct. And with the engineering skills and knowledge that they had at the time, and the materials they had to build in a safety factor. You don't just build a bridge strong enough to hold the train, you build it strong enough to hold the train plus a lot more to allow a safety factor. So the stuff they built in those days was really robust and built to last. So it's a happy accident that they built this really efficient system with really straight lines on a really flat surface, which is very efficient to run on. But they also built this really robust infrastructure that still survives to the present day and might even be strong enough to be brought back into use. I would love to see trains running on this thing again. Let's keep going south. And once again, it peters out here into the fields and becomes a little hard to pick up. I think it continues here, goes through the middle of this farmyard. You can still see the outline of the old tracks running through the fields, just barely. Looking very faded now. Crossover point here, can we see it on the street view? No, we can't, it's a private entrance. Okay, let's keep going south. Would have crossed over here, Bachelor's Walk. Now this I think would have been a level crossing. So this is where the trains would have come down this person's driveway. Crossed over the road here. Keep following through the fields, we're going through a cutting, and we're now getting into the outskirts of Keady. Some homes have been built on top of where the line was, and it would have crossed over the Tassel Road here. See, is there any evidence of a train crossing over? I don't think there is. I wonder if this was a level crossing. Or was it a bridge that was since filled in? Still a bit of clear ground here at the back of SFM Engineering. And then round for another treat. If we take the street view of Anvil Crescent, there's another viaduct. I've been in Keady a few times. Never knew to this day that they had a viaduct. Can you imagine trains running on this thing again? What a sight that would be. Beautiful. And keep going south. And this is where the old right-of-way crosses over what looks to be a relatively more recent housing development. So you're looking down the tracks, there's the viaduct. And thankfully they didn't build houses right on top of the tracks, but they built them fairly close. These look like they've been built since the line was closed in '57. And there's another old bridge here carrying the road, so the railway would have run under this viaduct. And again, if we were to reopen the railway line, it's very close to people's homes here. That's one of the challenges you would face. I'd say if you sunk the tracks a little bit lower, built a sound wall, planted some trees to mitigate the noise, you might be able to pull it off. But you're very close to some houses here. And then Grainmore Road crosses under Grainmore Road. It looks to me like this footpath has been added after the fact. I wonder if that was added, if the bridge was widened. And we can look down on these foundations. This looks to be the old station buildings. Was this the old station terminal? Was this the old station building? It looks like the tracks would have gone on either side of the building. Very interesting. Always interesting to see how much of the old railway is still intact. Would have crossed over here, Victoria Street. So this must have been a level crossing. Looks like someone's put a little Republican memorial in there. But look what's still visible of the old station building. So the tracks must have crossed over this street and on out to Castleblaney. And the old Castleblaney line continues somewhere out here, and I've tried to follow the old line out to Castleblaney, but it's really hard to do. The Keady to Castleblaney section was closed in, I think, 1957 was when, the Armagh-Keady section was closed in 57, the Castleblaney to Keady section was closed in 1924. So it's been closed for a lot longer, which means much more of it has faded away and a lot more has probably been built on top of it. So that's the Armagh-Keady line. Don't know how feasible it is to get that line reopened. It'll be one of the trickier ones, but if we got the Portadown-Armagh section reopened, I think it would prove the concept. Everybody would see how convenient it is that you can suddenly whisk yourself up to Belfast in record time without being stuck in traffic. I think people would come to appreciate it. And you might have other towns and cities demanding to get their old railway lines reopened as well. Maybe Keady would be one of those towns that would like to get reconnected to the railway network. A lot of the infrastructure is still in place, these beautiful old viaducts, but there are challenges too.